In the broken streets of Eldoria, Seraphine roams, searching for scraps to eat. Her heart is heavy with sadness and loss. One day, she sees a brave group of rebels standing up to royal soldiers, their courage sparking a small flame of hope within her. As the battle rages, Seraphine feels both fear and admiration for their bravery. In that moment, she wonders if she can turn her pain into action and fight for something bigger than herself. The streets of Eldoria were not kind. They were narrow and dark, filled with shadows that whispered despair. Seraphine moved quietly through the alleys, her small hands searching for scraps of food. She felt the weight of loss pressing down on her, a heavy blanket that wrapped around her heart. The laughter of her childhood seemed like a distant memory, buried beneath the ruins of a city torn apart by war. As she turned a corner, a sudden noise caught her attention. Her heart raced as she peered around the edge of a crumbling wall. A group of rebels stood defiantly against a line of royal soldiers. The rebels were ragged but fierce, their faces lit with determination. One shouted, "We will not be silenced! This is our home!" The words hung in the air like a challenge, igniting a small flicker of hope within Seraphine's chest. She watched in awe as the rebels clashed with the soldiers, the sound of metal ringing through the streets. Fear gripped her, but she could not look away. Each rebel fought not just for themselves, but for a future they all dreamed of. They are brave, she thought, her heart pounding. Can I ever be that brave? In that moment, she realized that courage could bloom even in the darkest of times. As the battle unfolded, the rebels shouted encouragement to one another, their voices rising above the chaos. "Keep fighting! We are stronger together!" The words danced in the air, filling Seraphine with a mix of admiration and longing. Could she, too, transform her pain into action? Could she join this fight for something greater than herself? The thought lingered in her mind, a seed planted in the soil of her despair. She watched as one rebel, a young woman with fiery red hair, took down a soldier with a swift, calculated move. "We will not give up!" the woman cried, her eyes blazing with resolve. Seraphine felt a rush of emotion, a yearning to be part of this bravery, to stand up against the oppression that had taken so much from her. But as the last clash echoed through the streets, the rebels began to retreat, their numbers dwindling. The soldiers regrouped, their faces hard and unyielding. Seraphine's heart sank, the hope that had sparked within her flickering like a candle in the wind. She moved back into the shadows, her mind racing with questions. What could she do? Who would listen to her? In the quiet of her thoughts, she felt the stirring of a plan. She was small and alone, but she was not without strength. "If they can fight, so can I," she whispered to herself, a promise that echoed in the emptiness around her. The fear in her heart began to shift, turning into something else, a resolve to find others like her, others who had suffered but still held on to the flicker of hope. As she wandered through the streets, her eyes scanned for signs of life, for others who might feel the same burning desire for change. "I will not be alone," she murmured, feeling the weight of her decision. The city was filled with lost souls. Perhaps they too would be ready to rise up against the darkness. Seraphine took a deep breath, her heart racing with determination. She had witnessed the spark of rebellion, but it was now up to her to fan the flames. Would she be able to gather the lost, to build a movement from the ashes of despair? The questions lingered in her mind, a challenge and a promise intertwined. The path ahead would not be easy, but she was ready to take the first step, ready to fight for a cause that could change everything. The streets of Eldoria felt colder to Seraphine as she wandered through the alleys, the echoes of laughter from her childhood fading into the shadows. Once filled with warmth and joy, her life had turned into a silent struggle. Memories of her parents danced in her mind, her mother's gentle smile and her father's hearty laughter. Now, only silence remained, a heavy blanket of loneliness that pressed down on her chest. As she scavenged through discarded scraps, Seraphine's heart ached with a longing for connection. "What happened to us?" she whispered to herself, the words swallowed by the emptiness around her. Just then, a distant commotion broke the stillness. Curiosity piqued. She followed the sounds, her heart racing. She came upon a small group of rebels, their fierce looks and determined stances standing defiantly against a squad of royal soldiers. The clash of steel and shouts filled the air, and for the first time in ages, Seraphine felt a flicker of hope. They fight for something, she thought, something worth more than mere survival. She watched as one rebel shouted, "For our freedom, for our future." The words struck her deeply, igniting a fire in her soul. Fear gripped her as she witnessed the battle unfold, but alongside it came a swell of admiration. "Could I ever be that brave?" she mused. The chaos around her crystallized a question in her mind. Could she transform her pain into action? The thought lingered as she returned to her scavenging, her heart a little lighter, her spirit a little stronger. Days passed, and Seraphine felt the weight of isolation pressing down on her again. Determined to change her situation, she began to seek out other orphans, those who shared her sense of loss. "You're not alone," she would tell them softly. "We can stand together." One evening, she found a group huddled in an abandoned building, their faces shadowed by despair. "I have a vision," she declared, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "We can fight back. We can be more than just lost souls." A boy with messy hair and a scar across his cheek stepped forward. "What do you mean? We're just kids. What can we do?" Seraphine met his gaze, her heart racing. "We have each other," she replied fervently. "We can learn. We can plan. If we unite, we can make a difference." A girl with bright eyes chimed in, "I want to fight for my brother. He was taken by the soldiers." Others began to share their stories, each tale weaving a tapestry of shared pain and determination. With every story, Seraphine felt their bond strengthen. As the sun dipped low in the sky, casting a warm glow over the group, they stood together, hands clasped. "Let's promise to protect one another," Seraphine urged, her voice passionate and direct. "We will not be lost anymore." "Together," they echoed, a chorus of voices rising in unison. With each passing day, Seraphine gathered more orphans, each of them bringing their struggles and dreams. She listened to their stories and found strength in their shared heartaches. They began to meet regularly, sharing food and plans, igniting a spark of purpose that had long been absent from their lives. One evening, as they sat around a small fire, Seraphine looked at her newfound family. "We may not have much, but we have each other," she said, her eyes shining with conviction. "And together, we will rise against the darkness. We will become a force of change." The group erupted in cheers, the sound echoing through the empty streets of Eldoria. In that moment, Seraphine understood that they were no longer just orphans. They had become a family, bound by hope and a shared desire for freedom. With this newfound strength, they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Seraphine spent her days wandering the streets of Eldoria, her eyes keenly observing the movements of the nobility and soldiers. She found herself drawn to the patterns in their routines, noticing how they interacted and where they gathered. Each day, she would sit on the edge of a fountain, hidden behind a tangle of overgrown vines, taking notes in the dirt with a broken twig. The thrill of gathering information filled her with purpose. One afternoon, as she sketched out a map of the noble quarters, her companions joined her. There was Rowan, a boy with a quick smile, Alara, whose fierce spirit often sparked ideas, and Thomas, who had a knack for finding supplies. They gathered around her, intrigued by her observations. "What have you found today, Seraphine?" Rowan asked, peering over her shoulder. Seraphine looked up, her heart racing with excitement. The soldiers change shifts every 3 hours. If we can create a distraction, we could slip past them unnoticed. Alara's eyes widened. That's brilliant. We could use that to our advantage. Tomas scratched his head. But how do we create a distraction? We can't just throw rocks and hope for the best. Seraphine paused, considering their options. What if we set a small fire near the market? It would draw the soldiers away from their posts. Rowan's brow furrowed. But what if it gets out of control? We could end up drawing more soldiers than we expect. Seraphine nodded, understanding the risk. We need to be careful. But if we plan it well, we can make it work. The group fell silent as they weighed the possibilities. Seraphine felt a spark of determination. She continued, "We have to be smart about this. We can't let fear hold us back. We are fighting for our future." As the days passed, Seraphine's confidence grew. During their next planning session, she shared more ideas, suggesting routes and strategies that surprised even her. The room filled with energy as they debated and refined their plans. "I never knew you had such a talent for this," Alara said, her voice filled with admiration. "You're like a general." Seraphine blushed, feeling the weight of the title. "I'm just trying to help, but I do feel like we can make a difference." However, as the day of their first act of rebellion approached, doubt crept into Seraphine's mind. What if she led them into danger? What if they failed? She found herself staring at the walls of their hideout, her heart heavy with the burden of leadership. Tomas noticed her silence. "You okay, Seraphine?" he asked gently. "I'm just worried," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if I fail? What if someone gets hurt because of me?" Rowan stepped forward, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You won't fail. You've brought us together, and that's a huge step. We trust you." Alara nodded, her eyes fierce with belief. "We are all in this together. No one is alone. We'll fight beside you, no matter what." Seraphine took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of their support. "Okay, I will do my best. We can't just survive. We need to fight for a better future." The night before their plan, they gathered in their hideout, their hearts pounding with anticipation. Seraphine could see the determination in their faces, each one ready to risk everything. She felt a swell of pride, knowing they had come together as a family of sorts. "Tomorrow, we make our stand," she declared, her voice strong and clear. "We fight not just for ourselves, but for everyone who suffers under the weight of this tyranny. Together, we will show them our strength." The group erupted in cheers, their voices echoing in the quiet night. As they shared their hopes and fears, Seraphine felt a sense of belonging. She was no longer just a girl wandering the streets. She was a leader, a beacon of hope for those who had lost everything. In that moment, she knew she was ready to embrace her role. No longer would she let self-doubt hold her back. With her friends by her side, she would fight for a future where the oppressed could rise and reclaim their lives. The fire of rebellion had ignited within her, and there was no turning back. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows over the hidden meeting place of the rebels. Seraphine stood at the center of a circle formed by her fellow orphans, their faces a mix of determination and worry. They had been working together, building their strength, but now they faced their first true test. Whispers of betrayal had stirred the air, and tension crackled among them, like the distant rumble of thunder. "Listen, everyone," Seraphine began, her voice steady, despite the fear swirling in her chest. "We have to address what happened with Lyra." She could see the unease in their eyes, a reflection of the doubt that had crept into their hearts. "I know it hurts, but we must understand why she left us." A boy named Jax, his brow furrowed with frustration, spoke up. "She didn't even say goodbye. How can we trust anyone now?" His voice was loud, echoing the feelings of many in the group. Seraphine took a deep breath, searching for the right words. "I know it feels like a betrayal, But maybe Lyra was scared. We all are. She lost faith in our cause. Her own heart ached at the thought of Lyra's departure, but she had to stay strong. If we want to grow, we must learn to forgive. We cannot let fear divide us. Sophie, a quiet girl with bright eyes, chimed in softly. But what if she tells the soldiers about us? What if she puts us in danger? Her fear was palpable, drifting like a fog through the group. Seraphine nodded, acknowledging the concern. That is a risk we must face, but if we do not stand together now, we will only fall apart. We need to show each other that we trust one another. We cannot let one person's fear take away our hope. As the discussion continued, the group faced another challenge. Supplies were running low. The food they had scavenged from the streets was almost gone, and the cold nights were creeping in. It was time to make hard choices. We need to raid the market, suggested Leo, his voice firm. There are still plenty of supplies there. We can take what we need. Seraphine felt a chill at the thought. But what if we get caught? We can't risk losing anyone else. She looked around at her friends, their faces lit with desperation. We can't act recklessly. We have to do something. Jack shot back, his fists clenched. We can't just sit here and starve. Lyra left, and if we don't get food, more will go. Maybe we can go in pairs, Sophie suggested, her voice trembling slightly. If we split up, it will be harder for them to catch us. We can grab what we can and meet back here. Seraphine considered this option. It was risky, but perhaps it was their best shot. Okay, she agreed, her heart pounding. We'll go in pairs, but we must be careful. We cannot let fear control us. We are stronger together. As they made their plans, Seraphine felt a glimmer of hope. Despite the challenges, they were united in their struggle. They shared their fears, their hopes, and their dreams, weaving a tapestry of trust among them. Later, as they prepared to head out, Seraphine pulled Jax aside. I know you're angry, she said gently, but we need to be a team. Lyra might have left, but we can't let that stop us. Remember what we're fighting for. Jax looked at her, his expression softening. I just don't want to lose anyone else, Seraphine. I'm scared. She placed a hand on his shoulder. So am I, but we can't let fear win. We have to trust each other. That's how we'll survive. With a deep breath, Jax nodded. Okay, let's do this together. As the group set off into the night, Seraphine felt a renewed sense of purpose. They were not just a band of orphans. They were a family, bound by their struggles and their dreams. They would face their trials together. And through it all, she knew that trust and loyalty would light their path forward. As the sun rose over Eldoria, casting a warm glow on the streets, Seraphine felt a surge of determination. The rebels had gained momentum, and whispers of their successes spread through the kingdom like wildfire. But with this newfound strength came a shocking revelation. An ancient alliance existed between the nobility and mercenaries, a bond that could shift the power dynamics in Eldoria. Did you hear what they said? One of the new recruits, a boy named Joran, exclaimed as he paced back and forth. The nobles and mercenaries are planning something big. Seraphine nodded, her mind racing with possibilities. We need to use this information. If we exploit their alliance, we can rally support from others who feel marginalized. We can turn the tide in our favor. The group gathered in a dimly lit room, the air thick with anticipation. Seraphine stood at the front, her heart pounding in her chest. Listen, everyone. This is our chance. We cannot let it slip away. We know the nobility has made deals with the mercenaries, and this could be our moment to unite those who have suffered under their rule. Kira, an older girl with fierce eyes, raised her hand. But how do we reach out to them? They might not trust us. We must show them we are fighting for a common cause, Seraphine replied. We share their pain. We have all lost something to the cruelty of the nobility. We can be their voice. The group murmured in agreement, the fire of rebellion igniting within them. They began to discuss strategies, each member contributing ideas and thoughts. Seraphine felt a sense of pride as she watched her comrades come together, their shared vision growing clearer. But as they planned, a sudden thought struck her. The upcoming skirmish with a band of soldiers was approaching, and she had heard that one of her closest friends, Lyra, would join the fight. Lyra was brave, but during the last battle, she had been injured. Seraphine's heart sank at the thought of losing her. Would she sacrifice her for the greater good? That evening, as the group prepared for the skirmish, Seraphine found herself deep in thought. What if I have to choose between saving Lyra or achieving victory? She whispered to herself, her brow furrowed with worry. Kira noticed her distraction. What's bothering you, Seraphine? She looked up, her voice trembling slightly. What if we face the enemy and Lyra gets hurt again? I can't bear to lose her. But if I focus too much on saving her, we might lose the fight. Kira placed a hand on her shoulder. You have to trust your instincts. It's a tough choice, but you are a leader. You have to think of the bigger picture. The next day, the skirmish arrived. The rebels moved stealthily through the forest, their hearts pounding with anticipation. Seraphine led them, her resolve steady, but her mind was torn. When they spotted the enemy soldiers, her heart raced. Stay close, she commanded, her voice firm. As they engaged in battle, chaos erupted around her. Seraphine fought fiercely, her eyes scanning for Lyra among the fray. Then, just as she spotted her friend battling valiantly, Lyra stumbled, falling to the ground. Seraphine's heart dropped. Lyra! She shouted, but the fight was fierce, and she was surrounded by enemies. In that moment, Seraphine faced her choice. She could run to Lyra's side, but doing so would leave her comrades vulnerable to attack. Focus, Seraphine, she reminded herself. She took a deep breath, her mind racing. Hold the line, she called to her comrades, rallying them to push forward. We need to protect our own. Fight with all your strength. With a mix of fear and determination, Seraphine charged forward, just as Lyra was about to be overwhelmed. She fought her way to her friend, using all her strength to pull Lyra up. We need to go, now. Together, they retreated to safety, breathless but alive. As they regrouped, Seraphine felt a wave of relief wash over her. She had chosen her friend, but she had also protected her people. Thank you, Lyra gasped, her eyes filled with gratitude. You saved me. Seraphine smiled, her heart swelling with pride. We save each other. That's what this fight is about. In that moment, Seraphine realized that her commitment to her cause was stronger than ever. She would fight for her friends, for the lost, and for a brighter future. The path ahead was uncertain, but she felt ready to face whatever came next. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a golden hue over the battlefield as Seraphine stood at the front of her makeshift army. Her heart raced, each beat echoing the hopes of the people she had fought so hard to protect. Today was not just another day. It was the final stand against the royal forces that had brought them nothing but pain. Are you ready? A voice called out from behind her. It was Alara, a fierce young girl who had joined Seraphine's cause after losing her family to the king's soldiers. I have to be, Seraphine replied, trying to sound braver than she felt. She turned to face her companions, a mix of familiar faces and new allies, all united for this moment. We fight not just for ourselves, but for everyone who has suffered under this rule. Remember why we're here. A murmur of agreement rippled through the group. They were tired, hungry, and scared, but their determination shone through their weary eyes. Seraphine raised her hand, silencing the chatter. Today, we show them that we are not afraid. We are stronger together. And with a deep breath, she drew her sword, its blade glinting in the fading light. For Eldoria! She shouted, and the crowd echoed her battle cry. For Eldoria! As they charged toward the enemy, Seraphine felt the rush of adrenaline pump through her veins. The clash of steel and the cries of battle surrounded her, but she focused on the plan they had meticulously crafted. She spotted the royal soldiers forming a line, their armor shining coldly in the dim light. "Flank them!" she shouted, directing her troops to spread out. "We can't let them box us in." Her heart raced as she moved with her comrades, dodging arrows and swinging her sword at any soldier who came too close. Each swing was fueled by the memories of those she had lost, and every clash with the enemy reminded her of the life she wanted to reclaim for her people. In the thick of battle, Seraphine noticed a group of soldiers trying to surround Alara. "Alara, watch out!" she yelled, rushing toward her friend. With a swift motion, she struck down the soldier threatening Alara, who looked up at her with wide eyes. "Thanks, Seraphine," Alara shouted, her voice firm despite the chaos. "Let's keep fighting." They fought side by side, pushing through the ranks of the royal forces. Seraphine could see the tide of battle shifting. Their numbers were small, but their spirit was unbreakable. "Stay close," she called out to her comrades. "We need to keep moving forward." As they pressed on, a massive figure emerged from the fray, a knight in shining armor leading the charge of the royal forces. His presence struck fear into the hearts of many. Seraphine's breath caught in her throat. This was the knight who had been responsible for the death of countless innocents. "Seraphine!" a voice shouted. It was Marcus, one of her closest friends, panting heavily as he reached her side. "We need to turn back. We can't take him on." "No," Seraphine replied fiercely, her grip tightening on her sword. "We have to face him. He is the symbol of everything we are fighting against." With renewed resolve, Seraphine led the charge toward the knight. The closer they got, the more she could feel the weight of her people's hopes pressing down on her. She was terrified, but she had come too far to turn back now. "Together," she shouted, rallying her troops. "On my count. 1, 2, 3. They surged forward, a wave of determination crashing against the knight's imposing figure. Steel met steel as they clashed, and Seraphine found herself face to face with the knight, his eyes cold and calculating. "You think you can win this?" he taunted, his voice booming over the din of battle. "You're just a child playing at war." Seraphine's heart raced, but she stood tall. "I am not a child. I fight for a future where we are free." With a fierce cry, she swung her sword at him, feeling the strength of her comrades behind her. The battle raged on, but in that moment, she felt a sense of clarity. She was not alone. They were all fighting for a brighter tomorrow. As the final blows were exchanged, Seraphine could feel the tide turning. The royal forces began to falter, their confidence shaken by the sheer will of the rebels. With one last rallying cry, Seraphine and her companions pushed forward, their spirits unyielding. When the dust finally settled, the battlefield lay quiet, save for the distant cries of victory. They had won, but at a cost. Seraphine looked around, her heart heavy with the weight of their sacrifices. In that bittersweet moment, she knew they had ignited a flame of hope in a war-torn kingdom, forever changing their lives and the fate of Eldoria. Share this story if you believe that courage and unity can conquer even the darkest of times. Let us know in the comments how standing together with others has changed your life, and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring tales like this one.